Chapter 4176. Please return. Langley Xian's expression did not change. He had the appearance of an old cadre. If I don't see her today, I will absolutely not leave. That person gnashed her teeth in anger. This saintess must demand an explanation for the Linglong Palace master. Wu Fu, if you don't stop, don't blame me for taking action. Tang Beiyuan said impatiently. A woman who has to rely on the overlord to resolve everything. Only you people would treat her as the mistress of the imperial palace. Wu Fu laughed coldly. Come. Do you really think this saintess is afraid of you? As she spoke, Wu Fu's Xian energy burst forth from her body and she got into an attacking stance. Tang Beiyuan's expression was cold. She raised her hand and was about to attack. Suddenly, a young girl's clear and serene voice rang out from the room. Beiyuan, let her in. Qing Luo. Tang Beiyuan's hands paused as her expression changed drastically. For the past few days she had been guarding outside the door. Naturally he knew about Yi Qing Luo's current condition. If Yi Qing Luo saw Wu Fu, and Wu Fu suddenly attacked Yi Qing Luo, what should she do? The risk was too great. It doesn't matter. Doesn't she want an explanation? I'll have a good talk with her. Yi Qing Luo's tone was indifferent. Heh. A glint flashed across Wu Fu's eyes. She retracted her attacking stance and raised her head arrogantly. Did you hear that? It's your master who wants to see me. Don't block the way. Tang Beiyuan's face was livid and she refused to budge. Wu Fu straightened her back and strode towards the door. When he approached Tang Beiyuan, he even puffed out his chest and bumped into her. Tang Beiyuan's eyes burned with anger. She clenched her fist and was about to punch. Beside her, Langley Xian held her hand and shook his head slightly at her. Wu Fu swaggered into the room with her head held high. Only then did Langley Xian let go of Tang Beiyuan and said in a low voice, "Go find Di Zun." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips and stared at the closed door for a moment. She gritted her teeth and said, "Pay attention to what's going on inside. I'll go look for His Majesty right away." Inside the house, Wu Fu stepped into the room. That arrogance of hers had mysteriously dissipated. She did not know why, but her heart inexplicably began to beat uneasily. His originally arrogant face also became nervous and his heart trembled. It was as if the air was filled with a kind of pressurizing aura. It made her a little breathless. Wu Fu didn't want to admit it. But he had to admit it. This was emanating from his bones. The fear towards Yi Qing Luo. Following the sound, she slowly walked into the inner hall. The room was decorated very elegantly. The scent of sandalwood in the air was soothing, but it made her heart tighten even more. It was as if he was looking at His Majesty right in front of him. The light in the room was dim and hazy. Her gaze slowly fell on the bed, the young girl who was leaning against the headboard. The luxurious and exquisite undergarments wrapped around the girl's beautiful figure. She just leaned against the wall. The lines of her figure were soft and smooth. The girl's black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, silky and thick. Between her brows was a lazy and cold gaze. Her half-squinted charming eyes were suffused with a faint cold glint. That pink lips slightly curled up into a smile. Although it looked delicate and charming, it inexplicably made one's scalp go numb and a chill run down their spine. Just a glance. Chapter 4177. Why? Don't you want to see me? The young lady's voice was filled with indifference and laziness. Wu Fu shuddered as though she just realized her motive for coming here. Her eyes were fixed on the person on the bed. Her gaze was burning as though she wanted to confirm something. But after staring at the young lady for some time, her brows were knitted into a knot. Yan Free City's mysterious lady, didn't you make a big fuss outside earlier? Now you're speechless when you see me? Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule. Wu Fu's face flushed red as her eyes widened. Who's speechless? He would never admit it. She was stunned by Yi Qing Luo's imposing manner. The prideful woman raised her chin arrogantly and said, "You instigated the overlord to kill our temple master. You're alone, hiding in the room like a turtle. What kind of ability is that?" Yi Qing Luo's eyebrows rose. Her long and narrow eyes were like a cat looking at her lazily. "Oh? My Xian killed the Linglong Palace master? Do you have any evidence?" "You." Wu Fu bit her lower lip. "Do I still need any evidence?" You were taken away by the Hall Master and the Overlord went to save you, so he killed the Hall Master. You saw it with your own eyes. Yi Qingluo's lips curled upwards with a "are you an idiot" expression. You didn't see it with your own eyes and have no evidence. On what basis do you say that Xian killed the Linglong Palace Master? Other than the Overlord, who else can kill the Hall Master? Wu Fu thought that Yi Qingluo was quibbling. Yi Qingluo tilted her head, her index finger lightly tapped on her lips and said evilly, "She committed suicide." Nonsense. Wu Fu retorted without hesitation. If you want to find an excuse, you should find a better one. How could the Hall Master possibly commit suicide? Oh then, it was the Palace Master of the secluded palace who killed her? Yi Qingluo smiled. That's even more impossible. Wu Fu exploded. Brother Gong would never kill the Hall Master because of you. You're such a fickle woman. You've already seduced His Majesty and now you're trying to seduce Brother Gong. Yi Qingluo clicked her tongue. At the mention of her beloved brother, his battle prowess soared up. Why didn't he have this kind of fighting strength when he was denouncing Lord Hall Master? A few seconds of silence for the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace. The girl's face still had that kind of carefree and lazy expression. It was as if he had no reaction to her anger at all. This made Wu Fu feel very frustrated. Are you done? Yi Qingluo asked with a smile. Wu Fu bit her lip and clenched her fists tightly as she looked at the unaffected young girl. She forced herself to calm down. Her motive for coming here wasn't to question Yi Qingluo and the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness's relationship. She couldn't let Yi Qingluo say a few words to make her flustered. Yi Qingluo. No matter how you quibble, Hall Master died because of you, that is the truth. I'm going to kill you and take revenge for the Hall Master. Wu Fu's eyes turned cold as her palm suddenly moved and her profound energy exploded, striking towards Yi Qingluo's face. This palm strike was like a hot knife through butter. It brought along an extremely strong force. Langley Xian, who was outside the door, sensed this energy fluctuation. He instantly broke through the door and rushed into the room. Mistress. But it was too late. Chapter 4178. Wu Fu, don't you dare. After informing DMO Xian about this matter, Tang Beiyuan rushed back and happened to see this scene. Her eyes turned red. Using the fastest speed in his life, he dashed forward. Yi Qingluo had not only temporarily lost her profound energy, her own strength. She couldn't even exert her strength. Facing Wu Fu's attack, Yi Qingluo couldn't avoid it at all. But at this moment, with a bang, a figure flew out of the room and landed heavily on the ground. The ground cracked, revealing a huge deep pit. Gravel flew everywhere, smoke curled up. Faintly, a figure could be seen lying in the deep pit. At the same time, there were numerous people outside the courtyard. Before the crowd could get a clear look, they saw a purple figure rushing over. That figure was tall and imposing. His purple robe rippled in all directions like flowing clouds under the powerful qi. That man's long arm reached out. The young lady lying lazily on the bed was pulled into the man's arms. Wait a minute. On the bed? Then, the one who was sent flying was not Qingluo. Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the man's arms, that languid, elegant, cat-like young lady, her eyes filled with tears of excitement. Luckily Qingluo was fine. A large palm from behind her rested on her shoulder. The thick palm brought a reassuring feeling. Tang Beiyuan glanced sideways and met with Langley Xian's calm eyes. He gently pulled her into his arms and said in a low voice, "Madam will not let anything happen to you." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips tightly. Her gaze shifted little by little to the direction of the deep pit in the ground. The smoke dispersed. The person lying in the deep pit. Wasn't that Wu Fu? Tang Beiyuan was stunned. What was going on? Could it be that Qingluo had regained her strength? But looking at Qingluo in the arms of the Overlord, it didn't look like she had regained her strength. If she hadn't regained her strength, how did she do it when Wu Fu attacked her? Not only was she safe and sound, but she even repelled Wu Fu. Cough. Cough. The person in question, Wu Fu, was also very confused. She felt as if her entire body had been broken. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were also shattered. When he coughed, he would even cough out large mouthfuls of blood. She was in so much pain that her whole body was curled up. Yama Mystic Maiden. When the Linglong Palace's disciples saw this, they immediately rushed forward and wanted to help him up. But before he could get close, a formless air wave came toward him. Profound waves rippled in the air. All the Linglong Palace disciples who were near Wu Fu-er were pushed away. The Linglong Palace's disciples trembled and looked towards the source of the chi wave in horror. His eyes met with a pair of cold black eyes. It was just a slight match. He felt as if he was in an ice house. They shivered and immediately lowered their heads, not daring to move an inch. It was the Overlord. Dizun was stopping them from getting close to the Empyrean City Ferry. Now the entire Linglong Palace was almost under the control of Dizun. Dizun stopped them from approaching Wu Fu-er. How could they dare to disobey? Everyone could see that. This was Wu Fu-er's own doing. Offending Dizun was equivalent to offending Dizun. No one cared about Wu Fu-er, who was lying on the ground twitching. Tears and blood mixed together. Chapter 4179. Are you hurt anywhere? Zhou Xian didn't even look at Wu Fu-er but lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms as he asked gently. He asked while asking. His gaze swept over Yiqing Luo from top to bottom. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she leaned her head on his shoulder. No matter, I know what I'm doing. Looks like I have to tie you to my side at all times. Zhou Xian's tone was slightly displeased. The moment I'm not by your side, you start to create trouble. Yiqing Luo cried out in injustice. I'm very obedient. Extremely obedient. Zhou Xian lowered his head and bit her nose lightly, indicating that he didn't believe her words. Yiqing Luo snorted. The too sweet atmosphere made the surrounding people not dare to disturb them. Just at this moment, suddenly he heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from afar. Following that, they saw a lady dressed in a green lotus robe rushing over. Her vision fell onto Wu Fu-er, who was deeply embedded in the pit. When she saw Wu Fu-er's current state, tears streamed down her face. Wasn't that person Wu Fu-er's grandmother, Hall Master Wu Yan? Perhaps Zhou Xian's heart was on Yiqing Luo. Or perhaps Zhou Xian didn't intend to stop the two of them from interacting. Hall Master Wu Yan easily rushed to Wu Fu-er's side and speedily fed the pill into Wu Fu-er's mouth. At the same time he injected profound qi into Wu Fu-er. Grandma. Wu Fu-er was in so much pain that her body was twitching, but her consciousness was extremely clear. When she saw Hall Master Wu Yan, her stomach was filled with grievances as it surged up. Don't talk. Hall Master Wu Yan's voice was trembling as he held his granddaughter's icy cold hand tightly. When the pill entered her stomach, the pain in Wu Fu-er's body was finally alleviated. But that face was still terrifyingly pale. Hall Master Wu Yan's heart ached as he trembled as he caressed Wu Fu's icy cold face, tears flowing down uncontrollably. Grandma. Fu-er is in so much pain. Wu Fu-er lay in Hall Master Wu Yan's arms and cried. Hall Master Wu Yan hugged her, his heart aching for her. Grandma will help you. She hugged Wu Fu-er and stared hatefully at Yiqing Luo's direction. Imperial Madam. Fu-er is just young and impetuous. Even if she did something wrong, you shouldn't have been so ruthless. After killing our palace master, do you still want to kill the only mysterious fairy of our palace of Linglong? Hall Master Wu Yan's words had indirectly reminded the disciples of the Linglong Palace Hall. This Yiqing Luo was also responsible for the murder of the other two mystical maiden. Now, the palace master of the Linglong Palace had also killed the palace master of the Linglong Palace because of her. Yiqing Luo could be said to be the enemy of Linglong Palace. Every single word and sentence was to provoke the Linglong Palace's disciples' hatred towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo, who had long seen through everything, raised her brows without any change in expression as she looked at Hall Head Wu Yan, her eyes filled with ridicule. Hall Head Wu Yan, have you forgotten I seem to be younger than that precious granddaughter of yours? Young and impetuous? When she said this, could she use some brains? Using Hall Head Wu Yan's words, being younger can only be considered as being young and impetuous. Even if she did something wrong, she shouldn't be punished. Right? Chapter 4180. Hall Head Wu Yan's face was twisted into a ball, as she had not expected Yiqing Luo to use the loophole in her words to counterattack. If you can't do it yourself, what right do you have to ask me? Yiqing Luo sneered. Moreover, I've already said this many times, your hall master and those few profound nymphs' deaths have nothing to do with me. If you've ascertained that it's me, please bring out the evidence. After a slight pause, Yiqing Luo's smile turned into a sneer. It's just a matter of opening your mouth. Can I also say that you were dissatisfied with the palace master of the Ling Long Palace and wanted me to become the next palace master's successor? So you tried to usurp the throne and killed the palace master of the Ling Long Palace? What nonsense are you talking about? Hall leader Wu Yan's face turned ashen as he retorted. Yiqing Luo shrugged her shoulders. Everyone knows about Sima Zhao's intentions. Do you really think that no one can see through your ambition? Hall Master Wu Yan's body suddenly froze and he retorted with a panicked expression. I have worked hard for the Ling Long Palace for decades and have wholeheartedly assisted the palace master. I would never dare to be disloyal. You outsider, why are you slandering me? What are your intentions? Yiqing Luo smiled without saying a word. That smile seemed to be mocking Hall Master Wu Yan's sophistry. No one would believe him. Hall Chief Wu Yan's expression was extremely ugly. As a disloyal person, she had been exposed in front of him. He felt the most guilty. He totally didn't notice that unknowingly he had been led into a rhythm by Yiqing Luo, totally forgetting to denounce his own granddaughter. His heart was filled with the desire to defend himself. Becoming the Ling Long Palace Master through the proper channels, or becoming the Ling Long Palace Master through schemes. The meaning between the two was completely different. Grandmother. Wu Fu Air cried pitifully in Wu Yan's arms. She swallowed the pill that Hall leader Wu Yan had fed her. The intense pain of having his body and mind shattered had already subsided. But this didn't mean that she would let Yiqing Luo off easily. She must seek justice for her grandmother. Yiqing Luo dared to make a move on her, the only mysterious fairy in Ling Long Hall. He had to pay the price for this. However, to Wu Fu Er's disappointment, even if Hall leader Wu Yan wanted to feel heartache for her grievances, he could not even take care of himself. Because, the moment Wu Fu Er opened her mouth, she felt wronged. The man's indifferent and cold gaze had already landed on Hall leader Wu Yan. His red lips curled up frivolously. His smile was cold. Even the light in his eyes was cold. In an instant, Hall leader Wu Yan felt a chill run down his spine. His throat seemed to be blocked by something and he could not speak. This senior has already said that this senior will deal with the matter regarding the Ling Long Palace Master. The man's deep and magnetic voice was extremely dignified as it reverberated in the air. The moment he opened his mouth, almost in an instant the entire place quietened down. Hall Master Wu Yan. Suddenly, Xianxia Xian called out Hall Master Wu Yan. These 4 words caused Hall Chief Wu Yan's body to tense up even more. The man's cold words fell into her ears. Do you still remember what I said on the first day I arrived at the Ling Long Palace? Hall Master Wu Yan abruptly raised his head as he looked at Xianxia Xian with a pale face. She subconsciously hugged her granddaughter tightly in her arms, and her lips trembled a little. Xianxia Xian's lips curled coldly as the sneer in his eyes deepened. If you've forgotten, this senior doesn't mind helping you recall. Following these words, the surrounding air seemed to have condensed into frost. Chapter 4181. Hall head Wu Yan's throat tightened. He could hear the threat in Xianxia Xian's words and didn't dare to pretend that he didn't understand Xianxia Xian's words. He immediately lowered his eyes and pursed his lips. The overlord said that no one is allowed to disturb Madame D during this period. Xianxia Xian's smile turned colder. There was no emotion in his frozen eyes. He spat out 2 words. Ah Xian. Langley Xian understood and patted the girl's head in his arms. He walked towards Hall head Wu Yan expressionlessly. Hall head Wu Yan's face tightened. He immediately carried Wu Fuer and wanted to retreat. But Langley Xian just stretched out his hand. He lifted Wu Fuer by the collar and lifted her up from Hall head Wu Yan's arms. Hall head Wu Yan was anxious to save his granddaughter. But before he could get close, he was stopped by Tang Beiyuan. Hall Master Wu Yan, the Empyrean fairy of Yen City, came to find the emperor's wife on her own despite knowing that it was the emperor's order. She even tried to kill the emperor's wife. Is the Empyrean fairy of Yen City looking down on the imperial palace? Or is she acting on your orders? Tang Beiyuan deliberately dragged out her words and raised her tone. It seemed to be a taunt and a threat. Hall Master Wu Yan shook his head in panic. Fu doesn't have any ill intentions. She just wants to ask the Imperial Madam what happened when the Hall Master died. She just wants to investigate the truth behind the Hall Master's death. This explanation was too far-fetched. Hall head Wu Yan felt guilty when he said it himself. Tang Beiyuan raised her hand and stopped Hall head Wu Yan's explanation. Yanwu City's mysterious maiden barged into Madame D's resting room and attacked her. This is the truth. Hall head Wu Yan need not say any more. The more you say, I can't help but suspect if Yanwu City's mysterious maiden's actions are really related to you. These few words caused Hall Chief Wu Yan to stop trying to snatch Wu Fu back. Wu Fu was so scared that her face turned pale. Tears welled up in her eyes. Grandma. But no matter how she called out aggrievedly, Hall head Wu Yan could only bear the pain and turn his head away. In this situation, she was really implicated. Neither of them could escape. Hall Chief Wu Yan listened to the aggrieved cries that made her heart ache. She clenched her fists tightly and suppressed the surging impulse in her heart. Under Dmo Xian's suggestion, Langley Xian brought Wu Fu away. Without the sound of her crying, the surroundings were extremely quiet. The onlookers did not dare to break the silence. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo in his arms as he turned around and strode into the room. The door suddenly closed, blocking the view of the outside world. Tang Beiyuan looked at the trembling crowd before her and smirked. Today's lesson is to tell you not to disturb Lady D. Even if you offend His Majesty, you shouldn't offend Lady D. Do you understand? Inside the house, Dmo Xian carried her back to the inner hall. The girl kept her eyes closed as she rested. Only when her body leaned against the soft bed did she lazily open her eyes. Has it been solved? Very tired? Dmo Xian didn't answer her question but sat by the bedside and kissed her sleepy brows. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes and her voice was lazy. Still all right, just a little tired. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, her consciousness started to blur as she was half asleep. Chapter 4182. If you know that you're tired, you still want to see that woman? Dmo Xian's tone was somewhat displeased as he lowered his head and bit her lips. Yiqing Luo was in pain and her body struggled a little as she stared at him resentfully. I'm already so uncomfortable and you're still not going to comfort me. Her tone was filled with the coquettish manner of a young girl. Dmo Xian's feigned anger could no longer be maintained as he helplessly hugged her delicate body tightly. Why should I comfort you? He asked for it. His mouth was full of complaints, but his movements were gentle and affectionate. Yiqing Luo leaned into the man's arms, her charming eyes squinted. Her posture was as lazy as a cat. If I don't see her, I'm afraid the consequences will be even more troublesome. This is the best solution I can think of. What if anything happens? Dmo Xian pinched her nose. I'll be worried about you, understand? Yiqing Luo nudged her head against his chest. I know, so. I'm very serious about protecting myself. She raised her head and rested her chin on Dmo Xian's chest, looking up at his peerless countenance. Ah Xian, tell me. Who is the person who sent Wu Fu to my courtyard to create trouble? Dmo Xian knew that this little woman was trying to change the topic. He cooperated and didn't continue to harass the girl. He answered the girl's question. Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Yiqing Luo tilted her little head and blinked her charming eyes. There are too many guesses and there's no way to confirm and verify. Yes. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo had purposely chosen to meet Wu Fu. This was because Wu Fu had insisted on meeting her at this critical juncture, and had even made a big fuss about it. Wasn't it so that he could see her with his own eyes? And the reason to see her? He just wanted to confirm her current condition. After all, if the person behind the scenes was really related to the Dark Nether Palace, the matters between her and the Hall Master of the Ling Long Palace and the barbaric Bloodbone King, as well as the fact that she might have lost her profound energy. It was not surprising that the Palace of Darkness would know about it. Therefore Wu Fu was sent to test and confirm whether she had really lost her powers. Because ever since the news of the Ling Long Palace Lord's death spread out, Yiqing Luo then faded out of everyone's line of sight. Even if it was mentioned, the answer he gave was that the Imperial Madam was not feeling well and was currently recuperating. These were all similar excuses. This made the other party suspicious. Had Yiqing Luo really suffered some sort of injury in the confrontation with the barbaric Bloodbone King, causing any repercussions, etc.? Because of this, Wu Fuer appeared. Of course, this was only her guess. The person behind this might not be someone from the Dark Palace. The reason why Yiqing Luo would allow Wu Fuer to enter the room if she was not careful was to make use of Wu Fuer to eliminate the other party's guesses. Wu Fuer had always been afraid of her. Trembling with fear, he braced himself and entered the room, shouting all sorts of things. But on seeing that Yiqing Luo was safe and sound and her relaxed attitude, which part of her looked like someone who had lost her profound energy, or someone who was not feeling well. This is a sense. This made Wu Fuer's fear towards Yiqing Luo even more. Because of this, when he faced Yiqing Luo, he was filled with fear and uneasiness. Chapter 4183. The room door was opened by someone again. It was Old Lai, Patriarch Qiao and the rest. Tang Beiyuan was following behind. Old Lai was the first to bear the brunt as his eyes were filled with joy. Madame D, have you regained your strength? Earlier they were among those who rushed over with Zhou Xian. When the news of Linglong Palace Lord's death had spread throughout the Earth realm, and when the death of Linglong Palace Lord was related to the Overlord, almost all the influential figures in the Earth realm had rushed over to Linglong Palace Lord. These few days, everyone looked calm on the surface, but in actual fact they were all testing each other. Patriarch Qiao, Old Lai and the rest also knew that Yiqing Luo had temporarily lost her strength. So they went to find trouble with Wu Fuer. One by one they rushed over. Coincidentally, they saw the scene of Wu Fuer being sent flying onto the ground. No. Yiqing Luo looked at their joyous gazes as she shook her head slowly. No. Old Lai looked at her in astonishment. No? Then how did you do it earlier to send Yen Free City's mysterious maiden flying with one palm? The joy on the faces of the others also gradually faded. Yiqing Luo's weak body, plus the situation of losing her profound energy. After a long time, it was easy to arouse suspicions from all sides. And very easy to get into trouble. Yiqing Luo smiled, but it was a smokescreen for Wu Fuer's fear of me. No matter who the person behind Wu Fuer was, the matter that the other party wanted to investigate would be completely dispelled because of Yiqing Luo's actions today. After all, if Yiqing Luo's body was really affected by the barbaric Bloodbone King, then she wouldn't be able to meet Wu Fuer so boldly and send Wu Fuer flying with one palm. I can tell that Lil Luo is well prepared. Zhou Xian placed the young lady on the bed and pulled the blanket over to cover her up. He then sat by the bed and held her hand as his gaze fell onto a certain spot. When he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking manner. Yiqing Luo followed his gaze and looked over. A transparent white figure who was hiding in the corner was faintly discernible in the air. She was discovered just like that. This man was too perceptive. Yiqing Luo held on to Zhou Xian's hand, not letting his line of sight to intimidate that figure in the dark. Their attention was not diverted by Zhou Xian. They were all placed on Yiqing Luo, their faces filled with astonishment. What camouflage? He's that powerful. This wasn't just because she knew that Wu Fuer was afraid of her. Even they couldn't tell that it was a smokescreen. Yiqing Luo smiled, and when she lowered her eyes, her slender fingers gently caressed the cherry blossom totem on her wrist. His smile was a little unfathomable. On the other side, Old Man Song, who had received the warning from Di Guang, expressed his bitterness. He should have directly flown back into the Azure Dew bracelet. Why was he so nosy that he had to hide in his room in his spiritual body form to watch the show? As a matter of fact, Di Zun found out. Furthermore, he looked at Di Zun's eyes. He seemed to be very unhappy about the cooperation he had given Luo Yu. Was she blaming him for not stopping Luo Bingyao from fooling around? Instead, he was fooling around with her? Could he be blamed for this? What could he do? He was in despair, all right? Did he look like someone who could reject Luo Yu? Did Luo Yu look like someone who would give up after being rejected? If it was the Overlord himself, could he reject Luo Yu? Chapter 4184. Yes. The so-called camouflage. But she had secretly borrowed the strength of Old Man Song. After losing her profound energy, the divine weapon she carried could not be activated without the infusion of profound energy. Even the Azure Dew bracelet could not be activated. Only Old Man Song in the Azure Dew bracelet could move freely. Therefore, Yiqing Luo made use of Wu Fuer's fear of her. When Wu Fuer launched an attack, Old Man Yu Tsong appeared and sent him flying. Old Man Song was just a spiritual existence. Basically, he could not attract anyone's attention. Especially Wu Fuer, who was terrified. Not to mention she could not identify where the power to counter her came from. But she did not expect Zhou Xian to see that it was Old Man Tsong who was secretly helping her. Old Lai asked a few more questions. Yiqing Luo had just dealt with Wu Fu air and her body was already exhausted. In a daze he heard Zhou Xian chasing the few of them out. Shortly after, the man climbed onto the bed. His strong arms pulled her body into his embrace. Lying on the man's broad chest, her nose was filled with the man's elegant sandalwood scent. It was a soothing scent. Made her fall into a deep sleep. Inside the dark palace, the surroundings were filled with black qi and yin qi. Several figures in black cloaks stood respectfully on both sides of the hall. And in the middle was a tall figure half kneeling on the ground. That person was also covered from head to toe in a black robe and his face could not be seen clearly. In front of them, it was a black curtain. The curtain fluttered lightly like black smoke rippling. It rippled with an invisible and treacherous chill. The few of them couldn't help but shiver under the cold. Finally willing to come back? Behind the black curtain came a cool, cold voice without any warmth. That voice made one's scalp tingle. The black-robed man who was half kneeling on the ground knelt even lower, his forehead touching his head, his voice trembled. "Moss Master, you still know that I am your master?" The cold voice sneered, the tone was filled with a dangerous aura. The person kneeling on the ground trembled and said with a trembling voice, "This disciple doesn't dare." As soon as the black-robed man finished speaking, the air seemed to be filled with a cold glint. All of a sudden a sharp force rushed down. The black-robed man didn't even have time to scream before he was sent flying by the force. He smashed into the wall and vomited blood. The black-robed man's body landed heavily on the ground again. The black-robed man did not stop at all. He forced his swaying body to kneel on the ground again. A large mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth. His mouth was still saying, "Your disciple doesn't dare. Your disciple doesn't dare. Why wouldn't you dare?" The cold voice sounded like an Azura from hell. "I know I was wrong." The black-robed man curled up and begged for mercy in a low voice. The gloomy voice sneered a few times. Suddenly she heard that cold and gloomy voice with a hint of malice. "You like her?" The back of the black-robed man stiffened. He quickly raised his head and said, "Master, your disciple didn't. The cold voice sneered, his tone was full of ridicule. "You disobeyed my orders and secretly sent her a message. That's called didn't?" The eyes under the black robe revealed a horrified expression. Chapter 4185. Heh. When that cold voice chuckled, the entire person, even the pores, exuded a chill. "Not going to quibble anymore. Master is so resourceful, no matter how this disciple quibbles, I can't hide it from Master." The black-robed person's voice trembled. "This disciple is willing to accept the punishment." "There's no need to accept the punishment." The cold voice sounded cold. "After all your actions have become the key to help this seed achieve my goal." The black-robed person's body trembled, her face turned pale. In his heart, thinking of himself these few times, whether it was meeting her privately or wanting to take her away, it would turn the matter into a series of things which were pushed by him. It was no wonder she was unwilling to believe him. In his heart, no matter how much indignation, he also didn't dare to express any opinion. He also didn't dare to follow Master's words, act obedient to seek favor. "This seat's good disciple." The cold voice sighed faintly. "Want to get her?" The black-robed person's fingers suddenly curled up. "Master." He was vigilant in his heart. He wanted to plead for her. Once Master had his eyes on her, she would not be able to escape. But the words begging for mercy were at the tip of his tongue. But when he met that pair of treacherous cold eyes behind the black curtain, he stiffly dared not to open his mouth. The cold voice laughed in a low voice. "This seat's good disciple, don't forget. That red clear pavilion's pavilion lord also admires her. An overlord, a red clear pavilion's pavilion lord. Do you think just based on you can get the beauty back?" Suddenly his tone abruptly increased. "Just answer, do you want or not?" The black-robed person's heart instantly jumped. "Yes." He almost blurted out. There was no room for regret. "You are this seat's most beloved disciple. Whatever you want, this seat will naturally get it for you." That cold and gloomy voice cackled. Obviously the words sounded like concern for the black-robed person. However, his tone was enough to make one tremble with fear. Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo slowly opened her eyes in the midst of sleepiness. The man was no longer by her side. She lazily stretched out a hand. The position beside him was also ice-cold. Come to think of it, the man must have accompanied her until she fell into a deep sleep, then left. Yiqing Luo stretched herself. His whole body was still limp and he couldn't muster up any strength. In the past few days, he even needed someone to serve him 3 meals a day. He was already used to it. His heart would no longer be like before, constantly wondering when he would be able to regain his former strength. She was anxious. The people around her were actually more anxious than she was. These few days Yiqing Luo had also understood a little from old man Tsang. Her body had become like this. It was probably when the barbaric Bloodbone King was forcefully occupying her body. The force that had forcefully entered her body had blocked a certain place in her profound heart jade. That was why he temporarily lost his strength. He was unable to circulate his profound heart jade. After all, it was related to the cultivation of one's profound strength, as well as the circulation of one's profound jade heart. Before I can find the blockage. However, he did not dare to act rashly. All he could do was find out where the blockage was. Then he would unblock the blockage. Only then could he recover his strength. Now that things had come to this, Yiqing Luo could only wait patiently. This kind of matter couldn't be rushed. Roar roar. Suddenly something furry rubbed against her feet. Immediately following that, a white furry little head popped out from the blanket. Chapter 4186. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand. Chi-Chi's head was placed in her palm. Roar roar. Chi-Chi whimpered softly as though it was acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo carried the little one in her arms as her slender fingers caressed its little head. How is it? Did you discover anything? Chi-Chi squinted its tiger eyes with a comfortable and joyful expression, as its soft voice sounded like a child. Chi-Chi listened to Master's arrangements and went over to Wu Fu Er's side. It raised its neck and spread its limbs wide, revealing its white belly. Just as Master had guessed, Hall leader Wu Yen bribed the female disciple on guard and secretly went to the dungeon to see Wu Fu Er. Yiqing Luo caressed Chi-Chi's soft belly as her eyes narrowed. She specially asked Chi-Chi to keep an eye on Wu Fu Er secretly. It was to find out who was the person behind Wu Fu Er. Everything was as she had guessed. Hall Master Wu Yen should have led Wu Fu Er to seek refuge with other forces, against the Imperial Palace and against her. For now, Yiqing Luo's mind was only filled with the 3 words, secluded palace. After all, if it was other forces, even if they had any opinions about her, in front of Zhou Xian, they wouldn't dare to be so unbridled. Did you hear what they said? Yiqing Luo asked. Chi-Chi flipped over again. Hall Master Wu Yen said. Secluded Palace will definitely save Wu Fu Er and leave Linglong Palace. He also said that they have already sent news and can take action immediately. It was indeed the secluded palace. It was really a force that refused to leave. Why was it always on her? And this action, what action was it referring to? Secluded palace. They had failed several times, and their losses were considered heavy. Now they were going to take action again? What new tricks did they come up with this time? Or, what trump card did they have for sure? Yiqing Luo subconsciously thought of herself. The one who had lost her profound energy. Could it be that? The collaboration with Old Man Tsang to deal with Wu Fu Er had not fooled the other party? Yiqing Luo decided to inform Zhou Xian about this matter first. Yiqing Luo felt that with Zhou Xian by her side, anything could be easily solved. During this period of time when he lost his power, she would just rely on her man. She tapped Chi-Chi's head lightly. Go and see what Xian is doing. If he's free, ask him to come over. Chi-Chi rubbed against her palm for a long time before she jumped down from the bed with her tail raised and jumped out of the window. Chi-Chi's shadow disappeared from the room. A clear and majestic voice came from outside the door. Madame D. Yiqing Luo propped herself up as her gaze swept towards the room door, responding softly, Patriarch Qiao, is anything the matter? Patriarch Qiao paused at the door. The Overlord asked me to invite you to the front hall. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Xian? What did she want me to do in the front room? It seems that because of the mysterious Lady of Yama's matter, Hall Master Wu Yan incited many female disciples of the Ling Long Palace in an attempt to avenge the Ling Long Palace master. Patriarch Qiao's tone was a little helpless. Those female disciples have been incited to the point that they have lost their minds. They don't care about the overlord's existence at all. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her expression changed slightly. How does Zhou Xian intend to handle this? Chapter 4187. This time it was noisy. It was probably not just Hall leader Wu Yan's instigation. Not to mention the various superpowers that were eyeing them covetously from behind. Everyone wanted to share the burden of the Linglong Palace. After all, an existence like the Dizun would never stay in the land for too long. Hence, it was impossible for him to be interested in the Linglong Palace. Thus, the Linglong Palace would eventually fall into the hands of the various major powers of the Earth realm. During this period of time, if it wasn't for Dmo Xian's suppression, the Earth domain had probably already forgotten about the incident where they were nearly wiped out by the Gloomy Palace during the auction of the Earth domain. Now, was he finally unable to restrain himself? The Overlord only asked me to invite Madame D over. As for the specific solution, I guess we'll have to wait for Madame D to arrive and discuss it with her. Patriarch Qiao said. Did he need to invite her to discuss it? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly as her gaze was fixed on the door as she called out. Then will Family Patriarch Qiao please wait for me outside for a moment? I'll pack up and come out. Yes. Patriarch Qiao's expression didn't change much. Hearing this reply, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly darkened. His movement of getting up also gradually slowed down. She leaned against the soft pillow, her fingers subconsciously caressing the profound phoenix ring. However, now that he had lost his dark force, he couldn't activate the connection between the Netherworld Phoenix ring and the Netherworld Dragon ring. She pursed her lips and looked at the door again. Old Man Tsong. She concentrated and shouted in her heart. Old Man Tsong's voice sounded in his mind. What's wrong? Something has happened. Her expression was grave. Have you sensed Beiyuan and Langli Xian's auras? Generally speaking, if Dmo Xian was not in the courtyard, he would definitely leave Tang Beiyuan and Langli Xian in the courtyard. However, ever since Patriarch Qiao appeared, he had not heard of the two men. Old Man Tsong's spiritual body immediately floated out and circled around the room. But as soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have sensed something and his expression immediately changed. Not good. I can sense two very weak auras outside the courtyard. They seem to be the auras of those two guards. Weak. Beiyuan and Langli Xian had already been restrained? This was bad. Girl outside the door. Old Man Tsong sensed the person outside through the door. Go and find Venerable Sovereign. Chi-Chi has already gone. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. We can only temporarily hold up the people outside the door. Wait for Zhou Xian to rush over first. He could only hope. When Chi-Chi rushed over to look for Zhou Xian, he was not busy. Otherwise, Chi-Chi would obediently wait for Dmo Xian to finish his work before passing on the message. Madam, are you not ready yet? Outside the door, Patriarch Qiao's voice suddenly sounded again. There was a different emotion in his tone. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly as she took a look at Old Man Tsong and whispered, I'll have to trouble Patriarch Qiao to wait a little longer. I don't know where Zhou Xian has thrown my outer robe. Outside the door, there were several breaths of silence. Then the door was pushed open. Madame D, let me help you look for him. There's a difference between men and women. After all, Lord Qiao is my friend Qiao Yinyan's father. It's not right for him to enter my room alone. Yiqing Luo hurriedly stopped him. However, Patriarch Qiao's footsteps did not stop there. After pushing the door open, he directly walked in. At the same time, Old Man Tsong's figure speedily returned into the azure dew bracelet. Chapter 4188. When he saw that there was no movement on the bed, that pair of dark eyes flashed with a complicated light. Is this what Di Furen meant by looking for the outer robe? The young girl curled up on the bed. Her slender and soft body leaned against the soft pillow. It accentuated the girl's soft and beautiful figure. Her hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The bedding covered the girl's waist. When the young girl raised her eyes to meet his gaze, that pair of eyes that were like the most flawless jade in the world crashed into his heart like colored glass. It didn't look like he was looking for a robe. It could almost be said that from the moment she said she wanted to pack up and follow him to see Dmo Xian, She just stayed on the bed, not moving at all. Obviously, right from the start she had no intention of following him to meet Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo exchanged glances with the other party for several breaths and couldn't help but frown. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but when the other party's gaze landed on her, she felt as if she was dreaming. There was an obvious change in the expression in the other party's eyes. She hid the deep thoughts in her eyes and leaned lazily against the headboard. She deliberately relaxed her voice and said lazily, "I'm really sorry to have made Master Qiao come all the way here for nothing. I might have caught a cold when I was sleeping just now and now I'm in a coma. I'm afraid I can't go with you to see Zhou Xian." As she spoke, she raised her hand and rubbed her forehead. "Where are you feeling unwell?" the man blurted out almost instinctively. The urgency and concern in his tone made Yiqing Luo raise her brows. As if sensing that his emotions were not right, the man coughed softly and straightened his attitude. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm sure His Majesty will be very worried if he knows that Madame D isn't feeling well. So, may I trouble Patriarch Qiao to inform Zhou Xian about this?" Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she put on an unwell and weak look. It made the other party's gaze fixated on her even more intensely. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to ask them to leave, that person suddenly walked over with large strides. With a few steps he was already standing beside the bed. Yiqing Luo looked up. She looked into the pair of dark and repressed eyes. Patriarch Qiao would never look at her with such a gaze. "When did you find out?" He lowered his head and quietly looked at her. His eyes were dark and he had no intention of hiding it. Yiqing Luo played dumb. "What? When did you see that I'm not the Qiao family head?" The man didn't beat around the bush with her. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face slowly converged. It seemed that he did not intend to continue pretending. Yes. The person before him had the exact same face and voice as Qiao clan's patriarch. However, he was not the real Patriarch Qiao. How did he recognize me? It should be, from the very beginning. Because Zhou Xian knew her current condition, so how could he possibly let family head Qiao invite her to the front hall for a discussion? Even if there was a need for discussion. Even then he would take the initiative to come to her room. Then she purposely probed. She had to tidy herself up again before meeting Zhou Xian. If it was the real Qiao family head. He was naturally aware of her current situation. He knew that right now, she didn't even have the strength to tidy herself up. How could she possibly get off the bed alone and walk out of the room to meet Zhou Xian? So, from that moment onwards she was certain. The person outside the door was not family head Qiao. She originally thought that she could drag on for a period of time until Zhou Xian rushed over. Chapter 4189. He directly admitted that he was impersonating Patriarch Qiao. This honesty made her not know how to drag the time. "From what I know, you don't know much about Patriarch Qiao. How did you tell?" He opened his mouth to ask again, his eyes burning as he stared at her face without blinking. This kind of gaze. Yiqing Luo vaguely felt that it looked familiar. It seemed as though she had seen this kind of gaze somewhere before. "Yiqing Luo, can I assume that? No matter what disguise I put on in front of you, you will still be able to recognize me?" He suddenly leaned downwards, getting closer to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as her slender brows creased. "You are? Palace Lord of Secluded Palace." "It's him. That person who impersonated Zhou Xian. The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace. It's actually him again. Running over to impersonate Patriarch Qiao again." Yiqing Luo raised her hand and directly pressed against his chest, which was getting nearer. "You like to impersonate others so much?" He. The person who was recognized didn't panic at all. Instead he laughed lowly. His laughter carried a tinge of satisfaction. "As expected, you recognized me. It really was him." Yiqing Luo's expression congealed, unable to understand what the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace's strange laughter represented. "What do you want to do?" Yiqing Luo raised her eyes to look at him. He was still smiling as he looked at Yiqing Luo's face. His gaze was deep and filled with possessiveness. "Follow me." Yiqing Luo's body stiffened slightly as she was on high alert. The expression on her face maintained a languid elegance. "To where?" "To where you should go," he replied in a deep voice. His voice was no longer that deep and dignified Patriarch Qiao's voice, but belonged to him, a slightly hoarse voice. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes twitched acutely. His words were no longer "I'll bring you away," but "to where you should go." This change made Yiqing Luo's expression change slightly. "It's that person who asked you to come over?" He gave a gentle smile as he slowly bent down, placing both hands on her shoulders. "Yiqing Luo, I won't let you escape again, follow me." As he said that, his hand had already embraced her petite body. Originally it was just a light touch. But as soon as he touched it, he suddenly realized that the person in his arms had no intention of struggling at all. She was very obedient. He couldn't help but lower his head to take a few more glances. He tried to pick her up. "Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace." Yiqing Luo suddenly cried out as she raised her hand and pressed against his arm. The force was very light. He paused and did not continue. The girl's eyes were calm. She looked up at him from such a close distance. "Zhou Xian is not far away. Are you sure you can take me away safely?" He shook his head. His gaze was deep and gentle. "You're willing to leave with me. The meaning is different." That gaze made Yiqing Luo extremely disgusted. To be honest, until now, she couldn't believe it. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace said that he liked her. He leaned over slightly and leaned towards Yiqing Luo's ear. His voice was clear and soothing, very pleasant to listen to. But the words that came out of his mouth made Yiqing Luo's face turn pale bit by bit. He said, "That bunch of brothers of yours who came all the way from Nirvana Realm, whether or not have the right to meet you again will depend on your performance." Seeing Yiqing Luo's entire body stiffening, her face pale and her eyes looking at him in astonishment. Chapter 4190. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. "What do you mean?" The smile at the corner of the man's mouth gradually widened. "It means exactly what it says." Yiqing Luo suddenly raised her hand and tugged the man's collar. "What did you do to them?" However, the hand that was about to reach out fell powerlessly to the ground. She was agitated and angry. Her body was getting weaker and weaker. The man's eyes drooped as he looked at the hand on the side of the bed, and the young lady's gloomy, pale and powerless face. "What's the matter with you?" He could tell that something was wrong with Yiqing Luo. Wearing Patriarch Qiao's face, revealing that kind of worried and obviously adoring gaze towards her. This indeed made Yiqing Luo feel disgusted. Adding on to the fact that she was worried about her own bunch of brothers. How could Yiqing Luo possibly answer the man's question? She pursed her lips tightly as she turned her head to avoid the man's outstretched hand, repeating word by word, "What on earth did you do to them? What on earth do you want?" The man's hand landed on empty air. He wasn't annoyed, nor did he have the intention to force her. He slowly retracted his hand and gazed deeply at her face as his voice became gentle. "I can guarantee that their choice is absolutely safe. But their life and death is in your hands. How can I believe you?" Yiqing Luo suppressed the fear and uneasiness in her heart as she forced herself to calm down as she asked. There were still a few days before the 3-month appointment with her brothers. They shouldn't be able to reach the Earth Realm from Nirvana Realm so quickly. After all, it was a place that spanned across 2 realms. This must be. He intentionally lied to her, trying to lure her into his trap. "I won't lie to you," the man replied softly as his thin lips pressed against her ear. "Moreover, you don't have the right to doubt, isn't it?" Yiqing Luo's slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly as the expression on her face turned gloomy. Yes. She had no doubts, no right to choose. Even if she told herself over and over again in her heart, her brothers didn't come to the Earth Realm. But what if? She couldn't afford to gamble on this. She couldn't admit the consequences of this what if. "I don't have much time. You also know that I don't have any power in the Palace of Darkness." He was very frank. With the face of Qiao family's master, he smiled gently and affectionately. "If you follow me obediently, I can guarantee the safety of your brothers." Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she raised her head slightly. Her cold eyes met with the man's without blinking. Then he slowly said word by word, "I will go with you." The corners of the man's mouth raised into a big smile. He said in a tone as if he was teasing a pet, "That's a good girl." He raised his hand and gently rubbed the girl's head. When his palm came into contact with Dao Qi's body, Dao Qi's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo only felt a chill down her spine. She held back and looked at him. "Aren't we leaving? Why aren't you leaving?" The man chuckled softly and slowly straightened his body. He let go of her touch. "One day you will accept my touch." Yiqing Luo. She would never be able to accept it for the rest of her life. The man stood up straight and turned around. Scope. Yiqing Luo gripped the bedding tightly. Her weak body made her unable to get down from the bed. But she didn't want the man to touch her. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she used her consciousness to summon Xianxia. Chapter 4191. He sensed an unusual movement. The man who was walking in front turned his head back alertly. When he saw that jade-colored object, a huge tortoise, a sturdy and flickering tortoise shell, and its body was coiled with something that looked like a snake or dragon, sticking out its scarlet tongue. That pair of tiny eyes even exuded a cold and sinister aura. This Palace Lord immediately took a step back as he stared at Black Tortoise vigilantly. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and touched Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as her figure moved slightly and sat on top of the tortoise shell. After she sat properly, her face was even paler than before. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Her breathing was also slightly panting, as though she was out of stamina. Palace Lord walked towards her as his brows creased tightly as he asked in a probing manner, "Is your body well?" Yiqing Luo's performance made one suspect if something had happened to her. That look was totally different from the flamboyant one she had seen previously. Even when they used her brothers to threaten her, she didn't show much of a reaction. Thinking of this, Palace Lord's eyes were filled with concern as he half squatted down and was about to check Yiqing Luo's pulse. Yiqing Luo only patted Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as she expressionlessly avoided Palace Lord's hand. "Xianxia, let's go." After that, she slowly raised her head as she shot a glance at Palace Lord indifferently. "What has it got to do with you if I'm not feeling well? Will you let me continue to rest in bed because of this?" Palace Lord's throat tightened as he met Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze, unable to say a single word of rebuttal. He indeed wouldn't let Yiqing Luo continue to rest. If Yiqing Luo replied in this way, that would be tacitly admitting the fact that she was really not feeling well. If Yiqing Luo in this state followed him back to Palace Lord's, would there really be no other effects? His mind was in a whirl. The young lady had already been carried out of the room by Black Tortoise. He quickly chased up and blocked in front of the young lady. The young lady raised her head as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord's emotions were fluctuating as he looked at the young lady's ridiculing gaze as his throat tightened. He was clearly worried that it would be unsafe and uncomfortable for the girl to sit on the Black Tortoise. But when his arm reached the girl's shoulder, the words that were on the tip of his tongue became, "Black Tortoise is too big of a target, will be discovered. I'll carry you." Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm. She raised her hand and blocked his outstretched hand. Her emotions were very indifferent. "Xianxia can keep up with you." He had already lost count of how many times he had been rejected by the young lady. But every time, his heart would feel a sharp pain as if it was being torn apart. Something seemed to be hammering on his chest. Under the young girl's indifferent gaze, his stiff hand slowly retracted. He pursed his lips and did not speak again. He turned around and vanished into thin air. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her slender fingers tightened. "Xianxia, keep up." No matter what, she had to make this trip. He summoned Xianxia first. If anything urgent happened, Xianxia's turtle shell would be able to handle it for some time. There was also Old Man Song. At the very least he could buy some time. Even if Chi-Chi didn't manage to find Dmo Xian in time. Tang Beiyuan and Lang Li Xian hadn't appeared for a long time, which would attract Dmo Xian's attention. She only needed to wait for Dmo Xian to rush over, then there wouldn't be much of a problem. But sometimes, no matter how perfect and precise her calculations were. But when things happened. Chapter 4192. The boundary between Earth Realm and Heaven Realm. A slender figure stood on the peak of the mountain facing the wind. A black dress under the strong wind blew like a thick black fog encircling that person's body. And behind that person stood two respectful ladies dressed in lotus green attire. "Miss Bai, do you think Yiqing Luo will really come?" One of the ladies with a vicious expression carefully probed. This was obviously a trap. Yiqing Luo was such an intelligent person, would she really come? In front, the slender figure's red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful but extremely distorted face surfaced a vicious expression. "Yes, she will definitely come." The two ladies in lotus green attire exchanged glances. The other amiable-looking lady smiled. If Miss Bai says she will come, then Yiqing Luo will definitely come. Let's just wait patiently. That scoundrel has always been putting on airs, in order to let others say that she values relationships and righteousness. How could she not come? The slender figure's voice was very pleasant, but the tone was so cold that it made one's scalp go numb. Isn't she relying on the overlord? This time round, let's see how she is going to escape from Miss Bai's palm. The vicious-looking lady sneered. The slender figure who was addressed as Miss Bai's smile turned even colder, as her gaze slowly fell onto the 10 over people who were hung on the cliff, covered with injuries. Those people. Weren't they the World Mercenary Group's people? Sensing the slender figure's gaze, the young man who was hung upside down, his blue eyes were filled with an icy cold glint, shooting straight towards her. What are you staring at? The vicious-looking lady raised her profound energy, as she struck a palm strike towards that person. The young man's throat felt a fishy sweetness as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The other amiable-looking lady stopped her. Don't kill them, these are all tools to restrain Yiqing Luo. Her words paused for a moment as she continued. Letting them die now, how can it be as delightful as torturing them bit by bit in front of Yiqing Luo? Obviously the lady was smiling, but the words that came out from her mouth made one tremble in fear. The three women looked at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. The laughter was sharp and piercing. The dozen or so people hanging at the edge of the cliff all looked angry, but they couldn't struggle at all. Captain, what should we do? The wounded youths whispered. Blue-eyed youngster Long Yunzhan's expression was icy cold as his eyes were filled with flames. We must believe in Qing Luo. Yes, we must believe in all Luo. We will all be safe. The young girl beside him had a cold expression, but her words were filled with warmth and intimidating power. No matter how low their repeated voices were, they were still clearly heard by the slender figure at the edge of the mountain peak. The woman's eyes immediately became even more ruthless. He swung his arm. A long, soft whip appeared in her hand. She raised her whip and flung it towards the 10 over people hanging on the edge of the cliff. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Did you treat Yiqing Luo as a god? Do you think she can save you just because she's here? Stop dreaming. The whip was raised as it streaked across the air, giving out a swish-swish sound. A wisp of black profound energy encircled the whip. This whip landed. Chapter 4193. The 10 over people's faces instantly turned pale. When Long Yunzhan saw that soft whip descending, his body suddenly moved. Making use of the rope which was hanging him, he swung his body horizontally in front of those 10 over people. He attempted to use his own body to block the descending whip. His action made the young men and ladies' expressions changed as they cried out in shock. Group leader. Just as the soft whip was descending, suddenly a hurricane swept across. The air was filled with strong profound energy. Following that, they saw that soft whip which was about to land on Long Yunzhan's body was flung away by the strong energy. Immediately following that, they heard a lady's shocked cry and miserable shriek. The 10 over people looked over in shock. They saw that black-robed slender lady who was standing at the side of the high peak was directly flung out, as she fell heavily onto the ground. There was no trace of the high and mighty look which she had earlier. The 10 over people's gazes suddenly lit up. Their gazes swiftly moved around the surroundings. Qing Luo was here. Qing Luo was here. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. To them, the only person who would appear in time to save them was only Yiqing Luo alone. Not only them were thinking this way. The lady who was flung out by the strong wind at the high peak also had the same thought. Under the support of two ladies dressed in lotus green robes, the slender figure stood up from the ground in a disheveled state. Her gaze was like a torch as she stared at the direction where the energy had come from. But a low and deep voice, extremely calm and dignified, when did this palace lord allow you to take action against them? The gloomy and cold dignified voice instantly covered the entire air. Everything in the surroundings became cold and condensed. The slender figure suddenly froze as a glint of hatred flashed past her eyes. But very quickly, it was covered up by the charming expression on her face. The two ladies dressed in lotus green robes who were supporting her, on seeing the person, became extremely respectful as they bowed in fear and trepidation. Palace lord. The profound waves rippled. A tall and slender figure slowly walked out. He was still wearing that face of Patriarch Qiao. But his entire temperament was emitting a sinister and powerful aura, totally different from Patriarch Qiao. "There's no need to get angry, Palace Master." The slender figure spoke in a coquettish voice. Her young and beautiful face was filled with a flattering smile. Her smile and frown were both charming and enchanting. If it was an ordinary person, this smile could really make people fall head over heels for him. However, when the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her, his gaze didn't change at all. The slender figure seemed to be used to this and continued to smile. "They are just a few insignificant tools. What's the harm in killing them?" The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace turned cold and his sleeves fluttered. The thick black yin qi wrapped around the slender figure and threw her to the ground again. The slender figure was thrown into confusion. It was accompanied by a cold and dignified voice. "Bai Mei, are you questioning me?" The slender figure, which was Bai Mei, fell to the ground in a sorry state. She curled up and trembled slightly. After hearing the threatening words of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, he couldn't help but shrink back and soften his voice. "No, I don't dare, Palace Master." When the other two ladies saw this, they tacitly welcomed the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace while looking behind her. "Didn't Palace Master bring Yiqing Luo here?" Chapter 4194. Could it be that? Did the Palace Master fail? He wasn't able to bring Yiqing Luo over? Even if he captured Yiqing Luo's former brother, to use him as a tool, he wasn't able to make Yiqing Luo take the bait? Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder are looking for my mother? Suddenly, an extremely lazy voice sounded leisurely. Immediately following that, a blazing figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. The young lady was sitting on the back of a jade-green giant tortoise. Two snake-like and dragon-like things were resting on the young lady's legs. Just as the young lady opened her mouth, those two intertwined things suddenly raised their heads. Jade-green eyes, scarlet snake head, it made one shudder. The young lady was leaning lazily on the tortoise shell. Her jet-black hair was not tied up, looking slightly messy. However, this only served to further accentuate her pale face, which was devastatingly beautiful. Yiqing Luo. Those two ladies dressed in lotus green robes stared blankly at Yiqing Luo, as they almost blurted out Yiqing Luo's name. Their hearts were out of control as they started to jump nervously. This was fear emitted from their bones. Fear towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly. Her expression was lazy as her gaze swept past the both of them. She knew that Hall Head Wu Yan had joined the Nether Palace. But she had not expected that Third Elder had also joined the Nether Palace. All for the sake of fighting for the position of Linglong Palace Lord? If they knew the real use of the Linglong Palace Lord, would they put in so much effort just to become the Linglong Palace Lord? She scoffed lightly with some ridicule. When the slender figure saw Yiqing Luo, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Amidst the excitement, it was mixed with resentment and hatred. New hatred and old hatred made her completely forget about the existence of the Palace Lord of the Nether Palace. "Yiqing Luo, you're indeed here." Before she could say the word here, what came towards her was a thick austere aura. A gust of cold wind brushed past her. The young lady who was sitting on Black Tortoise's back had already passed her, charging forward. Even her peripheral vision had not landed on her. Yiqing Luo's expression was solemn as Black Tortoise neared the edge of the peak. He saw a dozen people hanging at the edge of the cliff, their bodies riddled with scars. Her half-narrowed eyes were covered in a deep red flowing light, and she was like a bloodthirsty Azura, cold and murderous. The young woman's aura suddenly burst forth. She got up and wanted to get off the Black Tortoise's back. "Yiqing Luo." The Palace Lord's figure flashed, and in a blink of an eye, he stood right in front of Yiqing Luo. He stretched out his hand and stopped Yiqing Luo's body. "Let go." Yiqing Luo's eyes were icy cold. The red light flashed and her murderous aura was extremely strong. "I've said this before, if you listen to me obediently, nothing will happen to them." The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace had not retracted his hand, which was placed in front of Yiqing Luo. He could tell that there was something wrong with Yiqing Luo's current condition and body. Perhaps it was out of selfishness. He wanted to hide the fact that there was something wrong with the girl's body. So when he rushed over, he saw Bai Mei raising her whip, striking those companions whom Yiqing Luo cared about. He snatched the chance to stop Yiqing Luo, as he was very clear. If he didn't stop them, Yiqing Luo would definitely strike. This strike he didn't know if Yiqing Luo's body could take it or not. Furthermore, Yiqing Luo's unwell body would also be exposed. It was as if the gods were at work. So he struck out. Now naturally he wouldn't let Yiqing Luo forcefully support her body, to save those people who were unimportant to him. In his eyes. Chapter 4195. Yiqing Luo's eyes drooped as she swept a glance at the hand in front of her. Her eyes were dull as though there was no trace of emotion. Immediately after, her pink lips curled slightly as she looked at him coldly with a smile which didn't look like a smile, ridiculing. So what do you want to do? Tell me your motive directly. The palace lord's lips pursed tightly into a straight line. He tightened his fingers as the expression on his face changed slightly. But the hand in front of Yiqing Luo was not put down. Why? Didn't you want me to listen to you obediently? Then stop beating around the bush. Yiqing Luo only gave a ridiculing smile as her eyes were cold. You can waste time but my brothers can't. The palace lord still didn't move. I can assure you of their safety. Yiqing Luo sneered. But I don't believe you. Yiqing Luo. The palace lord's expression sunk as though he was angered. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as her eyes turned chilly. The aura which exploded around her was filled with alienation which made one unable to get close to her. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace could see it. Yiqing Luo was angry. Because the palace lord had kidnapped those brothers whom she cared about. So she was angry. And she was extremely angry. Looking at the young lady's anger and the ridicule on her lips. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace found it hard to breathe. Palace lord, why do you need to talk terms with her? Hall Master Wu Yan saw that the palace lord of Abyss Palace's attitude towards Yiqing Luo was obviously not right as he immediately spoke out, half probing and half reminding. She's alone now, so as long as these people are still in our hands, we can do whatever we want. Her words had just ended. Then he felt an ice-cold chill coming from the front. Hall head Wu Yan trembled slightly as she met with the palace lord's icy cold eyes. Her heart skipped a beat. Why do you need to butt in on this palace lord's matters? The palace lord's dignified voice was filled with anger. The profound energy was majestic like a sharp blade. Hall head Wu Yan gave a dull moan as his body flew out. His body fell to the ground and rolled in a circle. She propped herself up on the ground and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked at the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace in horror. No matter how stupid she was, it could also be seen. This palace lord of Secluded Gloom Palace's intentions towards Yiqing Luo. For Yiqing Luo, he stopped Miss Bai from taking action against those 10 over people. He even hit young Miss Bai instead. Wasn't this obvious? Taking revenge for Yiqing Luo? Palace lord he actually liked Yiqing Luo. Moreover, their relationship was obviously not shallow. Wasn't Yiqing Luo the person whom Secluded Darkness Palace wanted to deal with? The third elder was also stunned by the scene before him. She glanced at the palace master of the Secluded Palace, then at the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall. She immediately spoke to ease the atmosphere. She went to the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall and helped him up. She said, the palace master has his own plans for what to do. We just need to follow his orders. Her words didn't get a look from the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. The third elder hurriedly supported the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall and retreated to one side. He tugged the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall, indicating for her not to open her mouth temporarily. His gaze seemed to be pointing at Bai Mei, who was standing by the side with her half-squinted eyes. Hall head Wu Yan understood his meaning as she fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Looking at that side, the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace was still talking to Yiqing Luo. But after receiving Yiqing Luo's expressionless reply, his expression turned extremely gloomy, but he was still suppressing his anger. Chapter 4196. Bai Mei sensed someone approaching and her eyes turned icy cold as she shot over. Hall Master Wu Yan clutched his chest in pain, his face was pale as he suppressed his voice. Miss Bai, do you think? Palace Lord, he is he. Saying this, she pursed her lips intentionally as she hesitantly shut her mouth. Bai Mei's gaze turned even colder. Her vision looked towards the two entangled people as her red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful face was distorted to the extreme. Her black robe fluttered without any wind. A thick black fog rolled up. On the other side, no matter how Yiqing Luo opened her mouth, the palace lord of Ethereal Palace had not moved from his spot, preventing Yiqing Luo from saving the 10 over people by the edge of the cliff. Looking at the pale-faced youngsters hanging by the edge, Yiqing Luo finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She suddenly took a step forward as her eyes were filled with an icy coldness. Her bare hands moved. Her fingertips covered the azure dew bracelet. Under the cover of her palms, she made use of Old Man Song's azure dew bracelet to release a burst of profound energy. Yiqing Luo immediately used the azure dew bracelet to gather the profound energy and turned it into a sharp blade, heading towards the palace lord of Ethereal Palace. She had no intention to be lenient. Her expression was cold and icy cold. The palace lord of Ethereal Palace originally had no intention to dodge. But when he met with Yiqing Luo's vibrant and captivating eyes, he understood, if he didn't dodge, this attack would definitely be aimed at his face and it would come crashing down. There would be no hesitation at all. She had hardened her heart to kill him. His heart at this moment turned cold. The cold wind landed on his face. The palace lord of Ethereal Palace's figure swiftly turned as he avoided the sharp wind blade. Immediately following that, he retreated and blocked the path in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's body rolled and her soft petite body slid down from Black Tortoise's back as she rolled onto the ground. The ground was filled with dead wood and grass. It was just a light stroke, but a few bright red wounds appeared on her fair and tender skin. She ignored it. She turned over and sat on the ground as she looked at Black Tortoise. "Xiangu, bring him back." Xiangui shook his huge head. The snake dragon-like creature on her back stared at her with 2 pairs of scarlet eyes. Her eyes were filled with worry. Yiqing Luo shook her head at it. "I'm fine, you go ahead." Xiangui hesitated for a moment, but still obeyed Yiqing Luo's command and rushed to the edge of the cliff. In the meantime, in the instant when the young girl shot out that profound energy, forcing the palace master of the Netherworld Palace to dodge to the side, his expression changed drastically. His eyes instantly congealed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. No, that's not right. This wasn't Yiqing Luo's presence. The profound energy which attacked him was absolutely not the energy which Yiqing Luo released. Could it be Venerable Sovereign? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he dispelled it. Oh, this was not the aura of a Venerable Sovereign. Instead, it was an extremely unfamiliar aura that he had never come into contact with before. Who could it be? In his heart, hundreds and thousands of thoughts were running through his head. His gaze suddenly narrowed. When he saw the girl rolling down from the Black Tortoise's back, he felt a chill run down his spine. He subconsciously rushed over and reached out his hand to help the girl up. But he only reached out halfway. He recalled that the young girl didn't like his touch. His hand froze in midair. What made him astonished was, Yiqing Luo had no intention to avoid him. Or rather, Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at him coldly, her eyes filled with rejection. Chapter 4197. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace suddenly seemed to have thought of something. His deep and cold pupils suddenly constricted. Perhaps it was to test if his thinking was right or not. He suddenly stretched out both hands and placed it on the young lady's shoulder. Under his palms, the young lady's soft body had obviously stiffened. Following that, her icy cold eyes stared at him emotionlessly. She didn't evade. The palace lord's brows creased slightly as his palms slid down once again, directly pressing on the young lady's back. His other hand went around the young lady's waist. With a little force. Then he carried the young lady in his arms. It was effortless. The lady in his arms had no intention to evade. Instead, after she was brought into his arms, her body leaned against him softly. The palace lord's pupils contracted as his chest started to undulate due to nervousness. "Yiqing Luo, have you?" He lowered his voice and said the remaining half of the sentence in a very low and deep voice. "I lost my profound energy." If it was Yiqing Luo, when she saw those brothers hanging on the edge of the cliff, she would definitely fly over to save them. He didn't want his battle pets to go and bring his brothers up. Furthermore, if it was Yiqing Luo, when he stopped her from saving those youngsters, she would directly make a move. When Yiqing Luo made a move, that burst of energy was definitely not her presence. So, seeing Yi Qingluo rolling down from Black Tortoise's back without any intention to stand up. He suddenly understood. What was the reason for Yi Qingluo's series of actions, which was extremely strange? As expected, the young lady who was forcefully hugged by him turned stiff after she heard what he said. That pair of enchanting eyes that were originally covered with frost was now even more gloomy. Her face was covered with frost. Then what does the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace want to do to me? Yi Qingluo didn't deny it, as her indifferent tone seemed as though she wasn't talking about her own matters. The Palace Lord's arm suddenly tightened. What kind of person do you think I am? His tone was full of bitterness and some suppressed forbearance. Yi Qingluo only curled her lips in disdain. Haven't the Palace of Darkness always wanted to kill me? No, to put it more accurately, the Palace of Darkness had always wanted to get me. This is a good opportunity. Are you an idiot? The man's suppressed tone revealed a hint of anger. He hung his head. Her overly long black hair spilled down a little and hung on Yi Qingluo's face. He felt a little itchy. Warm air blew towards Yi Qingluo's ears. It was different from Zhou Xian's weak and flushed face when they were in close proximity. Her body tensed up even more. It was as if all the hairs on his body were standing on end. Her entire body was filled with rejection of his approach. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace felt even more bitter in his heart as he hugged Yi Qingluo's hands, almost wanting to rub her into his body. Knowing that you're in danger now, why did you still follow me? The suppressed anger reverberated in her ears. When Yi Qingluo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out loud. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly as she looked at him with a ridiculing smile. You're concerned about me? She was obviously smiling. But the words that came out of her mouth were filled with ridicule. Palace Lord of Abyss Palace, do you know that when you ask this question it's very sarcastic? She felt that this Palace Lord of Abyss Palace really had a problem with his brain. Chapter 4198. He made it sound as if he really loved her deeply. Becoming a whore and still wanting to erect a chastity memorial? She felt that this analogy was very suitable for the secluded palace. Right from the start. Using the World Group's brothers to threaten her. Now he put on a concerned attitude, berating her angrily why she had to come. Wasn't it contradictory? Wasn't it ironic? Did he treat everyone as fools? Yi Qingluo, must you misinterpret my meaning? The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace lowered his head as his extremely black eyes stared intently at Yi Qingluo's face. This was the first time he used this angle to look at Yi Qingluo. The petite body in his arms was very warm and soft. It was like soft cotton with the fragrance of a young girl. He couldn't bear to let go of her. Even though the young lady's body was tensed up and her expression was icy cold. Every single time their eyes met. The young lady's icy cold gaze. As though it could shoot through a person. He totally couldn't feel any of the warmth and sweetness she had when she faced Zhou Xian. But, even so, his heart was full of contentment. He had dreamt of this scene countless of times in the deep dark night. Today his dream had finally come true. He couldn't bear to let go. Even if he incurred the young lady's disgust, he couldn't bear to let go. In his mind he recalled what his master said to him. Master said, loving someone, isn't it to get her? If you can't get her, then what's the point of this love? Master said, so what if you can't get her heart? To be able to hold her in your arms, to let her accompany you, to let her belong to you alone, isn't that enough? Initially he couldn't understand his master's words. Now when he held her in his arms, that satisfied feeling in his heart. He finally understood the true meaning behind his master's words. The expression on his face changed slightly. Looking at Yi Qingluo's gaze, it revealed some treacherous and chilly greed. This gaze and the sudden change in his aura made Yi Qingluo's heart tighten. There seemed to be something. Unknowingly there was a change. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suppressing each other's aura. All of a sudden a panicked shout could be heard, Xi Qing. Goddess Tong. Hearing the overlapping calls, Yi Zichen frowned. Yi Qingluo used both hands to push away the palace lord's chest as she stuck her head out to look at the edge of the cliff. They saw. Xian Gui quickly rushed to the edge of the cliff and pulled them onto his back one by one. However, just as he pulled Long Yunzhan onto his back, an irresistible and chilling attack was directed at Long Yunzhan. Then a black figure leaped into the air. His entire body was enveloped by the mysterious Yin Qi, and it was as if he was about to be devoured completely. The cold chill of the frost spread in the air. Long Yunzhan dodged. That power did not stop at all. There was a loud bang sound. The edge of the cliff exploded. The few people who were still hanging on the edge of the cliff quickly fell down. It was extremely fast. Those people were all tied up by ropes. They were unable to concentrate and stabilize their falling bodies. The target of that attack had never been Long Yunzhan. Instead, destroy the cliff. Fortunately, Xian Gui reacted quickly. Just as those people were falling, he swiftly bent down and charged towards them. Xian Gui moved. The black figure also followed closely behind. The overbearing dark yin qi shot out. Chapter 4199. Group Leader. Seeing that figure falling down, the crowd immediately cried out in panic. It was Long Yunzhan. Just as that burst of overbearing profound yin qi landed. Using his last bit of energy, he knocked the few of them aside and was caught by Xian Gui in time. As for himself, he had forcefully endured all of the mysterious yin qi. Immediately following that, he lost all his energy and was unable to maintain his figure as he directly fell down. Just at this moment, a figure speedily dashed over. The lady's slender figure, but when she dashed towards Long Yunzhan, she hugged him tightly with both her hands. The lady's strength reduced Long Yunzhan's falling speed. The lady clenched her teeth as she held on to her last breath, hugging Long Yunzhan's totally exhausted body as she used all her strength to kick the cliff wall. Bam! Two entangled figures smashed heavily on the steep wall. The lady was below and the broken stones on the cliff wall had pierced deeply into her skin, causing numerous blood scars. The man's heavy strength was still pressing down on her body. This worsened the injury on the lady's back. This scene fell into the eyes of those the World Group mercenaries who were carried on Xian Gui's back as their hearts clenched tightly. A few cries of shock had already escaped from their mouths uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo turned her head around and looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the scene of Tong Ziqing's lower body, which was already filled with blood. Bai Mei. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she clenched her teeth and squeezed out these two words. Her gaze was like a sharp blade as it shot towards the black-robed lady who was standing on the other side of the cliff. Her eyes were filled with chilliness as though it could freeze one into ice. Bai Mei. Previously, because of a so-called young and beautiful face, she cooperated with the Palace of Darkness. In the end, she almost became the puppet of that human face of the Palace of Darkness. If it wasn't for Bai Su's appearance, at that time she would have been long dead. Hadn't Bai Su sent her to the balance historian to be locked up? Now she actually ran out again and chose to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness once again? Changed to a young and beautiful face again? Was this what it meant to be able to sell anything just for a face? Indeed, she didn't change even in death. Have you forgotten the lesson of the Dark Abyss Palace? Now she was still causing trouble here and hurting her friend. The girl's eyes were as dark as a deep lake. Vaguely, a few streaks of red light could be seen moving about. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei giggled. Her young and beautiful face gave off an extremely twisted and awkward feeling when she laughed. His facial features seemed to be twisted together. However, Bai Mei was completely unaware of this. She lifted her hand and gently placed her slender fingers on her lower lip. She purposely curled her lips into a charming smile. His smile was filled with thick mockery. Yiqing Luo, do you know why I came back? Her voice was sharp and grating. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting into people's eardrums. Yiqing Luo's gaze was icy cold. Did you think that the promise that secluded Darkness Palace gave you would really be honored? You're just a tool. The Dark Palace used to disgust me. So what? Bai Mei totally didn't care about Yiqing Luo's words. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. As long as I can see you go to hell, even if I had to sell my soul, I'd be satisfied. Her smile became even crazier, as though she had experienced some huge stimulation. Chapter 4200. Bai Mei was still laughing. In order to save me, I didn't hesitate to hurt myself to save you. Ah, aren't you all silly? That sharp piercing laughter kept reverberating in the air. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She looked coldly at Bai Mei as her eyes were chilly. For someone like you who has no heart, how would you understand? I'm afraid you've never thought about your sister. Yiqing Luo looked at her with ridicule. Your sister didn't hesitate to plead with Xian to let you live. But you, time and time again, chose secluded palace to hurt your sister. My sister? Is she even fit to be my sister? Mentioning Bai Su, Bai Mei's anger seemed to have been ignited as her anger surged. That slanderer was merely to torture me. If it wasn't for her. Bai Mei was so angry that her entire body was trembling, intentionally putting on a look of deep sisterly love, just to maintain your own hypocrisy. After she finished howling this sentence, she seemed to have regained her senses. The smile on her face slowly turned chilly. I don't need to understand the so-called feelings you speak of, I only want your life. Her vision shot towards the side, towards the 10 over people on Xian Gui's back who were in a sorry state. She wasn't flustered at all because Xian Gui had saved those people and lost the props to threaten Yiqing Luo. Just like that he stood there unhurriedly. When she raised her hand, her black robe fluttered in the wind. In her palm a black flute had appeared unknowingly. The flute was entirely black without any other colors. When she saw that black flute, Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Surely not. As though to prove her thoughts, Bai Mei placed the flute by her lips. A sharp flute sound entered everyone's ears. The world group's young men and ladies suddenly turned pale as they laid on the ground, crying out in pain. As the flute's rhythm increased, they were in even more pain as their entire bodies started to tremble. Jinzi, Xiaoyi, Ruo Pan, Xiao Yu. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned red as she shouted out those people's names. But no one was able to give her any response. The sharp flute sound intertwined with her calls. Damn Abyss Palace. To actually use such a sinister move. Ahaha. Did you really think that I would let you rescue her so easily? Bai Mei looked at Yiqing Luo's expression as she laughed contentedly. This was the first time she had seen such an interesting expression on Yiqing Luo's face. What is this? The expression of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. She glared at Bai Mei fiercely. Bai Mei fiddled with the flute in her hand. The smile on her face was no longer as flattering as before. She glanced at the palace master of the Dark Palace playfully and said with a smile, "This is naturally the mission that the Venerable One secretly gave me." Hearing the word venerable, the gloomy face of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. He suppressed his anger. His eyelids drooped slightly as an apologetic expression appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo, this matter. I didn't know about it, I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo's scarlet eyes swept coldly towards him. His gaze was as cold as ice, without a trace of emotion. She gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Her brothers were groaning in pain beside her ears. She said word by word in an icy cold tone, "Is there any meaning if you knew about it or not?"